to introduce Aaron Tan. Aaron is the CEO of ATD Solutions. He's obviously an expert and really all in all throughout enterprise architecture and well-perceived enterprise architect expert within the Asia Pacific region with operations directly in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. This is for us a very interesting opportunity to work with such a qualified partner in the consulting field of enterprise architecture in a region where we would obviously like to expand our presence. He's the co-author of the IISA ITA book on the body of knowledge for IT architecture, also president of the EA chapter for the Singapore Computer Society, over 30 years in global industry experience across Asia Pacific in consulting roles, and holds a Master of Technology from the National University of Singapore. So I'd like to welcome Aaron today.
Yes, thank you, Eric. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. So my name is Aaron, and thank you, Enric, for the brief introduction. I think it is a pleasure for us to have a joint webinar today, for the fact that we are just the beginning of our journey, of our partnership moving forward to provide or to give more option to our valued clients in terms of the capability of the enterprise architecture that is supported by the technology. So we have, of course, today we have Dr. Christoph that are going to present about introducing more about ADOIT and also the vision about what is the roadmap of ADOIT moving forward, as well as the today capability. So I think he's also a very well-known so-called individual with over 20+ years in the EA and all the BPM practices. And of course, one of the I think the quite prominent is about the releasing a book about user-centric of enterprise architecture published in German. So hopefully we can get the copy published in English pretty soon. And of course, he has a doctorate in the business informatics. So he's a qualified individual, and we will hear more from him shortly. And of course, Enric, I think you have met him earlier, and basically he's also one of our very passionate person in terms of the sharing of how to do enterprise architecture, and especially in the connection with the BPM, because I think not many tools out there in the market that can simulate BPM and EA with the seamless integration, as well as can create a simulation and almost like live use case scenario. So we will see him more doing live demo shortly during today's presentation. So with that, what to expect in the today context. So I think first part I've already done, we have done each other between ATD and the BOC. So we have been introduced. Three of us will be so-called running this webinar. Then after that, I will be sharing about introducing ATD very briefly. Then after that, followed by the Dr. Christoph. So we will hear from him about what is so-called a data-driven outcome, moving towards outcome-driven, because I think many of the so-called the challenges today that we face in the enterprise architecture is that too many data. Everywhere is the data, but how can we make use of that data? So this is where about the outcome-driven EA is so-called taking a place in the today context. Then after that, we will see how the ADOIT tool itself can support the whatever that we want to deliver or to achieve the value, the outcome from our enterprise architecture. Then the last session, I will be moderating Q&A. So in the meantime, when you have any questions, you can start typing in the chat. Then after that, we will do so-called question review. And after that, we will go through the question at the end of 3 presentations. So with that, let me just share with you about who we are. I think I'm from ATD. So I think some of the participants are coming from the BOC. So those who do not know us, so we have been so-called in the industry since 2006. And we have a 4 line of business, pretty much focusing on the enterprise architecture since the day one we are being formed. So initially we started by providing many training. So as we churn out more and more students in the last 15 years, so most of the students that we have trained, they have already moved up into their corporate ladders, and they start engaging many of the consulting company. And of course, after that, they keep coming back to our training because we provided a quite comprehensive training in the path of the business architect, information architect, software architect, infrastructure architect, solution architect. So we also combine the best practice of the ISA, which is the so-called the professional body architect skill set, which is what they call it IDABO, body of knowledge. Then after that, of course, they got the open group in terms of the TOGAF, Archimate, TOGAF BA. So pretty much all around enterprise architecture, and of course supported by the governance, the COBIT. So we do offer a COBIT certification from the foundation implemented to the SSL level, and of course DevOps as well as the ITIL 4.0. So all these are so-called support capability that are required for a successful enterprise architecture. So we have been so-called involved a lot in the training. Then, of course, in the last 6-7 years, our team are being engaged into the consulting. I think we have done quite phenomenal in terms of our achievement. So these are some of our client achievement in the 2018 and 2019. Three of our clients won the President Award of the Open Group Enterprise Architecture Award at the global level. So this says a lot on our capability and also our client success. And of course, this is also one of the few lists of our client that they actually is the Gartner client. So what happened is that they also consult Gartner in terms of our deliverable, our method, our framework, etc. So we have passed through that Gartner stringent in terms of our client submission and getting the feedback from the Gartner. So that says a lot of our capability too. And I think this is happening this year. So Forrester issued the EA award, global EA award, and two of our clients listed at the top 10 at the by Forrester EA award. This is actually happening in October, so just 2 months ago. So still fresh from the oven. So the rest of our client, I think, just listed here. We have done quite number in terms of the scale to the whole nation, like a Malaysian government, to the ministry government, to the central bank, to the banking, to the ministry, and also a government link company, as well as a multinational company. So talking about the digital transformation, I think many people, what I see is that they abuse the word digital transformation. Actually, they are still doing the same way as what they do in the last 10-20 years, except that every project that they put today, they use the word digital, because they told me that if they don't put digital, they don't get approved in terms of the budget. So at the end of the day, they don't do differently. But what happened is that if you want to be successful in the digital transformation, you need to work differently. So we cannot use the way that we used to work 20 years ago and apply it today. That doesn't work at all, because the world 20 years ago are still not that complex. Today is because of the digital. And I think this year is a major transformation globally because of the COVID-19. So things are moving very, very fast and rapidly. And of course, this is what Gartner says about this map on the right-hand side, if you can see there. So basically, it's the map of the complexity in anything we do inside the enterprise, have the impact to other people or other departments within the enterprise, as well as to the external. Likewise, whatever the external do, like we do for our partners or policy change, also impact others entity outside our organization. So Gartner will call it inside out, outside in, and outside out. Yeah. So basically, this is also another interesting slide, because what happened is that this is the 10 years prediction by Gartner. The Dr. Marcus Bloch, I think, made a prediction in the 7th October 2014 about 10 years from now, from then, which is now we are in 2020, that enterprises will have the new ecosystem that will be interdependent. So somehow we need to know that any changes that take place within the enterprise, we need to know what's the impact internally as well as externally. So this is where the so-called the digital enterprise architecture evolving. And of course, today with the COVID-19, I think 2025 is becoming now. Because at the time when Gartner made this prediction in 2014, we didn't know, no one knows about what would happen in 2020 when the COVID-19 strike the world. So I think now it's being forced that every organization have to have this type of visibility, what we call it a digital map. And of course, the era of digitalization itself has transitioned. Just now, I think I mentioned earlier that we need to do differently. We need to integrate between business and technology together. So no such thing as such as this is the business team, this is the IT team. So all the two teams need to work together. Business team need to be aware, need to be interested, need to know what sort of technology can help them. And IT people also need to know about the business challenges and how we can provide value. So of course, there are many challenges today, and these are typically a typical question that we need to answer. Many of our senior leaders, our key stakeholders, typically they want to know in terms of how do we get this answer? How do we know about transformation? What are our strategy? What are the challenges? What are the gaps? What sort of capability that we have? How many resources do we have? Do we have enough? Do we have less? So all these are basically the urgent pressing question that we need to answer. And of course, how do we so-called do a transition? Transition means our transformation journey. How do we sustain our portfolio, our investment? All these require an answer. And of course, the question goes on and on because we need to be able to answer all these almost like instantly, because I don't think our senior management will be happy when we tell them, boss, give me 1 week. They need it actually this morning or yesterday. You better give it to them by today. So if we don't have the platform, we don't have a so-called a framework, we can't answer that. That is where I think our role, I mean, we as a ATD as well as a partner with the BOC, in terms of the providing a platform that so that you can answer all these questions almost instantly. I would say almost instantly. I'm talking about few hours. I'm not talking about few days or few weeks, because actually you should be able to capture all this information into the platform and should be able to ask the platform to give us this answer. And with that, of course, strategic enterprise architecture will drive us and also function as a command and control within the enterprise in terms of the developing a strategic business planning, ICT strategic planning, or digital transformation planning. So we need to know the roadmap, we know all the gaps. That's why enterprise architecture playing a critical role. And of course, for us to manage the portfolio, managing the risk, and also managing the vendor or technology lifecycle, because technology lifecycle need to be managed properly. If you don't, any vulnerability will come in from that so-called the technology itself. So we need to be able to have a so-called control of our enterprise. That's why the enterprise architecture now getting a very strong momentum, and of course getting more and more people realizing the importance of setting up the enterprise architecture right for the first time. And this is also another analogy, the analogy that I think all of us quite familiar. But of course, now we are not be able to see this, but when we realize what we do, maybe perhaps the other department has done similar thing. So at the end of the day, what I would say is that in the era of computerization, we got the stovepipe, we got many islands. So if we don't do properly with the enterprise architecture, what we will end up 5 years from now, we will have a lot of the digital island. And digital island is no way to be reversed because the complexity is exponential. So we need to have the platform to avoid all these type of the duplication in our digital transformation journey. And this is also many so-called situations that I come across with many organizations. They can come out a very beautiful strategy in terms of the digital. They engage another consulting company to plan their digital strategy. Is fantastic. At the end of the day, the execution is back to the normal. So the number 3 there, digital transformation actually is just another IT team. You pass it to the same guy that you met them in the last 20 years. You've been dealing in the last 20 years. You tell them these are the initiative, these are my budget, you execute. So they're doing another project. So what would end up? It will end up something like this. So our digital transformation, it doesn't bring us a value. In fact, give us more headaches down the road. So instead of doing from number 1 digital strategy to the transformation, what I've been advocating together with the BOC is that you need to have a platform or the framework or the process or the methodology for us to analyze, to distill our strategy in terms of the impact to the entire enterprises, in terms of the capability, in terms of the strategy, in terms of the business, in terms of the information, in terms of the technology itself. Then once we understand the impact, we consolidate all the impact, then we fit that information into the digital transformation team that going to realize all the so-called strategy and the transformation plan that we have planned or we have developed. So the concept is like this. So we develop a so-called strategy. So the strategy is still exists today. When we understand the goal, the driver, the outcome itself, then after that we cascade down into the business itself. So we are looking at the business function, business people, business process, as well as the information in terms of data and attribute that are impacted. Then from there we look at the technology, because today we cannot run from the IR 4.0 or the IoT, the robotic process automation, the sensor, the machine learning, and look at all the cloud infrastructure. How can we support the business and the strategy? And with that, which is what our vision, the ATD vision since the day one, we want to help our client to have a digitally connected enterprise model. That's why we make a connection from the strategy to the business, to the information, to the application, and to the infrastructure. So any changes, any impact that impacted so-called strategy, we know exactly which technology are impacted, which are business unit impacted, which are the data model impacted, and vice versa. When we have some sort of so-called end of support of the technology, we know exactly which are the business, which are the strategy that are impacted as well. And at the bottom part is where we need to run a transformation, because transformation is very, very important for us to realize the enterprise architecture. So we will do a lot of the so-called transition in terms of the transition 1, transition 2, and etc. And of course, behind the scene, what happened is that the strategy and the business itself need to be aligned. Then after that, we analyze in terms of strategy itself, the impact to the business, information, application, and technology. So all the things that are impacted, we consolidate it into a gaps, as you can see on the screen. So business gap, application gap, infrastructure gap, and data gaps. And with that, we can execute fulfilling the gaps with many transformation projects. So in terms of the diagram, so this is what you can imagine your typical enterprise. So it's very, very difficult for someone, even you work for 20 or 30 years in your organization, to have this visibility. It's no way. Perhaps the department that you joined 5 years ago or 3 years ago now already changed. Maybe half of the team also already changed. And no way you can understand this. So if you don't have the visibility, you don't know what is exactly going on, how can we transform successfully? That's a very legitimate question that we need to answer. And of course, the way to do that is that with the enterprise architecture, we can create a digital twin. So we can model in terms of the motivation and strategy layer of every division. Then after that, we also understand the impact that bring to the business within their division, as well as with the other external division in terms of the process, function, collaboration. Then we also need to know what sort of technology are being supported. Are they adequate, or they need to be decommissioned, or we need to combine them, or we need to upgrade, or we need to buy a new one. Likewise, with the technology itself, is very, very important that need to be a so-called sufficiently providing infrastructure platform to support the application as well as the business. And of course, with that, we also need to have a good so-called information architecture that connect all type of entities. Because like many organizations want to move to the IR 4.0, they want to adopt IoT, but actually their information architecture is not structured, is not properly defined, and they can't achieve the maximum benefit that that they have invested in terms of the AI and machine learning, etc. So information architecture playing a critical role. And of course, the bottom layers is where we do the execution. So this is what we call it the concept of the digital twin. And you can hear more later from Christoph and Henry in terms of elaborating this concept. So this is basically in terms of the diagram of the digital enterprise architecture that I've been advocating in the last 6-7 years. So basically, we are now looking into the whole holistic model of the data, of the business, of the application, and the technology. into a so-called a digital concept or digital platform, like using a BOC. Then after that, of course, we need to look into the digital services, integration architecture, the security architecture. So all these are actually to support the transformation. Of course, now there are many ways organization doing the transformation, but as I mentioned earlier, that I come across to many enterprises, actually their digital transformation effort are not much different than 10 years ago, except they use the title, the project title with the word digital, but actually then now they need to change. They need to have some sort of the capability of the digital map, and of course creating a digital twin, and they do modeling, they understand the whole transformation that bring to the organization before they execute the project itself. And with that, we can develop a solution architecture. This is where we can engage the vendor, find the best of breed available tool or technology in the market. And then with that, we can so-called execute a project to realize our digital transformation. So in a nutshell, what happened is that enterprise architecture is the journey. So it's not a project, it's not a one-time off, but it's the journey that we need to go through as we are getting more mature, as we are getting so-called more acceptance and leading the market or the industry that we are in. So basically, from the SEC environment moving to the 2B, so there will be many gaps that we need to fill in. And of course, the bottom part is where we need to execute all the transformation journey using the word transition. The way we use the word transition is that you will never reach your destination, so you always be in transit. So transition 1, transition 2, transition 3, so the journey is continue. And the middle part is where we are using the method. Okay, so you need to be able to apply the rationalization method like business fit, application fit, technology fit, capability fit, and transformation fit. And of course, they got the context of using SWOT, PESTEL for your strategy, validation. Then after that, you need to understand the business application usage metric, technology inventory, end of life, end of support, capability, and also dependency metrics. That's a very, very important. So this is pretty much a framework of our execution in terms of how do we execute a digital transformation with enterprise architecture. So with that, I think I will just end here. So I will hand over to Enric again and to continue the presentation. And after that, I will take over again for the moderating the Q&A. All right, thank you. Enric, over to you.
Thank you. So thank you for that introduction of ATD. I think what you will find is quite a great overlap in how we see the future of enterprise architecture, while also the present, and what we need to really strategically invest on as architects. We'd like to now kick off the intro of BOC with a quick video that in a way also summarizes how BOC sees that journey. And then we'll get right into a quick summary and then right into the keynote from Crystal Moser. So I will kick off the video now.
Life is dynamic, and at some point, we all feel lost. With the help of maps, built from GPS data, we manage to orientate ourselves and adapt to changing circumstances the same way you can lead your company to success. Models are the map for your business. Turn digital transformation from a hurdle into a sprint. Transform your architecture into a highway. Evolve your processes into shortcuts. Leverage business process management, enterprise architecture, and governance, risk, and compliance to take sustainable, agile decisions based on the digital twin of your enterprise. Set your destination. Design your route. See how far you already are. And stay aware of possible threats, so you can decide which path your digital transformation shall take. We create competitive advantage through digital advantage. Benefit from over 25 years of experience and steer your enterprise to digital success with BOC Group.
All right, with that introduction, I would like to now continue with our slides. Perfect. So as the video introduced, at BOC Group, we're really focusing on bringing that digital twin ability to the enterprise and also to bring that as a collaboration platform for all the participants that are joining transformation projects to really put that architecture hat on. From a BOC perspective, I think most of our customers know this, but for the ATD customers that are here, yeah, we're 25 years in market with BPM, EA, and GRC software. We have now over 265 employees in 8 countries, and are happy to be expanding our network of partners with ATD as a very strong, one of the leading consulting firms in the APAC region. From the portfolio of software, as I mentioned, also in the video, we have ADOIT, ADOIT, and GRC for those 3 main domains that we really see as critical in collaboratively defining this digital twin of the enterprise, and obviously offered in an on-premise or SaaS environment. From our reputation, you probably have also seen us scored against in Forrester Wave, in the Leaders Quadrant, Gartner Magic Quadrant Visionaries, soon to come out, the 2020 version of that, and also in the Gartner Critical Capabilities. ADOIT had the highest score in re-architecting and transforming our ISO 27000 certified as well. And we also continue to receive very positive customer feedback in terms of the success in implementing our platform and leveraging it to really deliver business goals as well as the traditional enterprise architecture goals. Some of our customers also in the Asia Pacific region, for those of you who are not clients of ours, you might see some logos you may recognize there. Also a very recent introduction to our customer portfolio, Telecom Malaysia. They adopted both ADOIT and ADONIS for business process management and business architecture, and are really focused on bringing together and integrating both business layers, IT layers, and network. They're having a very interesting project, hopefully soon having a very nice case study to share with the rest of the community. And obviously customers around the world that make up our full portfolio of industries, of types of corporations, and of also different maturities of enterprise architecture. So we'll be happy to share more information with anyone who would like to have that. But that was just a very brief intro. I would like to now hand over to Christoph Moser, our ADOIT product owner and manager, and he's going to take us through our keynote presentation today, from data-driven to outcome-driven enterprise architecture. So that said, I'll now hand over to you, Christoph.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yes, maybe I start with myself. So in my job as a product manager, I attach great importance to understanding customer needs firsthand. So therefore, I'm still involved in customer projects, and as part of our build, measure, learn method, I have numerous conversations with our clients throughout the entire year to really understand where the journey is going. And that's why I'm looking kind of forward to sharing some insights with you into the current developments and trends we see on the market. Let me first focus on the title of our presentation. So it says from data-driven to outcome-driven enterprise architecture. So what do we mean by data-driven? What's meant by data-driven? So by data-driven, we understand the often chosen approach to build an EA repository as a source of knowledge for designing the organization. If you have achieved this, you usually have already reached a high level of maturity within your EA initiative. You have a great source of data for informed decision making. So usually this repository is then structured into different layers. You have from the bottom a technology portfolio layer. We have application portfolio with application services that support the business. We have the data portfolio, capability portfolio, and of course initiatives portfolio that guide us or pave the way for future business transformations. And of course we have kind of compliance portfolio, because we need to still stick to rules with our endeavors. So that we the composition of all those things we call the data-driven approach. So if you take, for example, TOGAF on the left-hand side, I guess you can see the well-known TOGAF ADM, which is structured into phases like architecture vision, business architecture, information systems architecture, technology architecture. And with a repository like we've been seeing before, you've now the possibility to answer questions when you come along these phases. So for example, you could say, what does the organization look like? Where are our locations? What applications do we have? Are they fit for purpose? Can we use them in the future to support the business processes? And from a data perspective, what are the main business objectives we have in use? How can we use them, and so on? And of course, from technology portfolio point of view, we talk about or need to understand life cycles of our applications and technologies we have in use. So all this is a great source of information for ongoing transformation projects. And I just compiled a couple of screenshots from ADOIT, what our clients usually do. So if it comes to the capability portfolio, for example, you can see a capability map, usually structured into customer-facing capabilities, market-facing capabilities, product management capabilities to take care on the delivery of the services to the market. And on the bottom, we have kind of shared capabilities that they use in order to deliver our services. When it comes to the color coding here, it's we usually use so-called heat maps. And these heat maps are quite often still based on more like a gut feeling of experts or enterprise architects. And that's also something we need to tackle in the future. So we really need to think of how can we gain really insights into these capabilities to have better and more informed decision making. Another example is data portfolio. I'm quite sure you've seen this view also a couple of times. So we have our applications, the business objects, and we see what application provides which business object. We can apply rules like single source of truth and really make sure that our data architecture is fit for purpose and the data quality is in place as we need it for our ongoing projects. We have the application portfolio. Some cases you might already have connected your EA repository with systems like CMDBs and so on to get better insights. So here, for example, in the screenshot, we see from a very application information from CMDB, in this case from ServiceNow. So for each of the applications, we can see incidents that occurred, problems that occurred, outages, SLA breaches. So this is valid information we use for then in the next step define the technical fitness of the organization. So we try to have really informed decision making here. We can define in this case the technical fitness of the organization, of the application, and based on that we design the application roadmaps. The same holds true for our technology portfolio. Also, we can integrate with external services. In that case, for example, with tools like Technopedia or Snow, external databases that inform us on life cycle. And with this color code, again, we see if our organization deviates from the life cycle of the vendors. So all this information together then forms a kind of network of elements. And of course, we have this cross-cutting views also. So if you take or pick one piece of your enterprise architecture, you directly can see what's impact if we change. In that case, you see here now in this business impact analysis, we take one technology, like in Archimate would be a system software, and from there we directly see the impact on the rest of the architecture. So the main question now is, if we as we achieved, or many of us achieved this state, if those views to really guide us. So we need to understand, or do they guide us in terms of where we need to go, and do they guide us how to improve to achieve our transformation objectives. And that's the main question we are facing, and that's the starting point of basically of my today's talk, to see where we can move from this position now to really do informed decision making towards our intended business strategy and transformation strategies. So first, let's take a look at what outcome driven means, or why outcome driven. So what we see changing currently, that the EA initiatives, like the traditional EA initiatives, let's say initiatives we did a few years ago, the main attributes there were like policing, everything's done centralized. Business IT alignment was a huge topic. Optimization, it was organization focused, so it's the inside-in version. And we have a long-term planning, like we plan target architectures, target application architectures for the future, for the next upcoming years. And now with this outcome-driven approach, we see a shift in the work of and the deliveries of enterprise architects. So we are going more in directions of participating than policing. We use a federated approach. So it's not that enterprise architects are the ones who define everything. It's more like a co-design of the organization in a federated approach. We are more business focused. That's an important thing. So rather than focusing on business IT alignment, rather than focusing on business IT alignment, we are directly business focused and no more trying to align our IT with the business. We focus on speed and customer centricity as opposed to internal optimization. We embrace the entire ecosystem. So we not focus on our organization itself, but also on the entire ecosystem in order to deliver, which is in Gartner terms, it's this outside out term. So what can our ecosystem deliver to the market? And one of the most important things we need to consider, we need to be more agile, because usually we've seen that those long-term planning didn't work out. So we need to be more agile in our planning together with the business. In the end, this leads us to the situation that we really need to redefine EA's value contribution to the business and to our entire organization. So the question is, as we now defined the outcome-driven means of enterprise architecture management, the main question is, how do we kind of reinforce a relentless focus on value throughout the necessary transformation journey? So how can we approach this all? But first of all, that's a finding I guess most of you already had, is if you take, for example, here the Archimate framework, when checking repositories and information held in ADOIT, we see across our client base that there's a strong focus on IT architecture. So it's still applications, technologies, what we are focusing on in our EA initiatives. But in recent years, we also see that the focus shifts towards strategy and business. So we applied business capabilities as a first step. It took quite a long time that business capabilities became acknowledged by the entire organization. But now we see it's a really nice platform to kick off the transformation initiatives. But still, topics like value streams and how they tie to strategy, customer focused topics lack, and we, as I said, still focus too much on IT architecture instead of motivation and business strategies. So that's the first finding. What we actually need to do is we need to, in order to change to outcome driven, we really need to focus on the outcome, on the key results, on the objectives of the organization. And we need to understand that in order to really contribute with value for our clients or within the organization, with value to the business, we need to cut our initiatives to become outcome driven into a slicing through all those levels and combine them to better outcomes. Still, we require this data-driven approach because that's the basis to inform our outcome-driven approach. The question is, how much focus should we put on the left side or on the right side? And there the finding is that in some cases we kind of overdid it with the portfolio approach. So we have very detailed information on almost everything on all levels in some cases, but we not really contribute to this outcome-driven approach by really defining objectives, key results that count for the business. So the rest or the remainder of my talk is now focusing on this outcome-driven world, but keep in mind we still require the data-driven information base in order to succeed in the outcome-driven approach. Okay, from an AA perspective, this requires new types of enterprise architecture services. They need to support strategic choices, and they need to support the translation of the strategic choices or the strategic initiatives into downstream implementation. Okay, that I already mentioned. This is only possible in case enterprise architects really participate in cross-functional teams and to really contribute the architecture perspective to the organization goals. It's not about policing, about technologies and technology violation. It's really to contribute in the architecture perspective to the business. And for that, enterprise architects need to deliver results that are of direct value for the business. Of course, we deliver in the traditional approach, we also deliver great values, but they're usually not seen by the business. So if we do a technology portfolio and understand technology life cycles, for sure this is value and is important, but it not delivers this direct value as I mentioned. Okay, and one great opportunity to define deliverables that counts we see in the approach of objectives and key results. So objectives key results is a goal system. It's used by Google and others. It's a simple tool to create alignment and engagement around measurable goals. The key term here is measurable. As stated by Marissa Meyer from Google, it does not have, if it does not have a number, it's not a key result. So we really need to our key results, also those from enterprise architecture, also our contribution, it needs to be measurable. Let me give you an example of an objective key result. So typically objective you could find in almost or in many organizations is delight our customers. So that's a valid objective. And of course, we need to underpin this objective now with concrete key results. So one key result could be reduce revenue churn from X to epsilon in percentage. So keep in mind, we need to measure the success of these key results. Increase net promoter score or raise product stickiness from X to epsilon. So product stickiness is, for example, a measure we apply at BOC for our product. We really need to understand whether people use the tools and if they come back to use it, and if we are successful in what we are offering or not. So that's the key term here, is product stickiness. Another important thing when it comes to outcome driven, because we can't do everything at the same time, we need to focus. And focusing is possible through a more agile approach, agile goals. Instead of using annual or even multi-year target architectures, spending time with planning the future, the uncertain future, OKRs can with enterprise architects can take a more agile approach when focusing on OKR. By using shorter goal cycles, companies and also the EA teams can adapt and respond to the ongoing change and not plan the change in advance for an uncertain future. Okay, let's see this from an EA perspective. So if it comes to objectives, or key results, we usually are directly responsible from the EA team. We can still focus on the same objective, delight our customers. But now we have our EA-specific key results. EA-specific key results in that case could be identify and agree 5 most important personas. So if we take an outside-in approach, we really need to understand the market. So one key item is personas. Of course, we're not defining those personas on our own knowledge just within the EA team. As I mentioned, we need to embrace the entire organization, talk to our business colleagues in the business and IT departments to really identify and fully understand the market and discuss with our business peers here. The second key result is identify 3 to 5 gains and pains per persona. So to really identify how can we help our clients. Define and agree the customer journey for all the identified personas so that we really see the strengths and weaknesses in the current customer journey or in future customer journeys in order to deliver the identified gains. So that's something we could do in a really early cycle. In later cycles, of course, our deliverables will change. So for example, in a later cycle, the EA deliverables could be perform minimum 3 integration ideation workshops with the business peers in order to really define what is needed on the market, agree the overall roadmap of a certain initiative, but not in the very details, but at least we have phases or milestones of the roadmap. And for the first part of this roadmap, the first milestone, or in Archimedes, for the plateaus, we identify the business objectives and key results together with our business peers, or the target, the real outcome that counts for clients and also for the business, but also information such as the risks for the current milestones, risks we need to tackle. So the important thing is that for each of those milestones, we again embrace the entire organization. We not just focus on clients, but also on teams like security teams and so on, risk teams. And we try to cross-cut all these levels into one initiative, not planning the entire result over years, but really focus on the concrete outcome we can deliver in the next couple of months. So what are the tools we usually offer? Here we see again a couple of screenshots from ADOIT. The first item, in the first step, we need to gain a clear understanding of the company's objectives in order to identify business opportunities in the market. So typically tools are Bestel, SWOT analysis. Of course, these are tools we use together with our business peers in order to really guide them and support them from a methodical perspective to identify those opportunities. Also, if you take an outside-in approach, so really driven from the market and from the market needs, in a kind of SWOT analysis, we first focus on the lower part here on the opportunities and threats. So we kind of invert the SWOT. We talk about opportunities and threats, and from there then we tackle the inside world, like the strengths and weaknesses of our organization. Both of these are great tools to identify those opportunities. The important thing is that it's not the challenge of the enterprise architect to come up with all the solutions with the SWOT, but to guide our business peers in order to really, with this methodical support, and really to identify the opportunities. The important thing is that we do this together, and it's not something just business does or IT departments do. It's a joint initiative. It's business transformation and digitalization is also a joint initiative. There's no more business IT alignment. It needs to be aligned right away. In an outside-in approach, we of course focus on the clients. We already seen in the objectives key results before that key results could be to identify personas. So we really need to define who are our personas. We can do empathy maps. We go into details and really want to understand what they feel, what they see, what they hear, what they actually need, understand their pain and gains. And that's a really important thing. We really need to bring it to the point what our initiatives are delivering for the market and for the clients. That's the first step before we even start with architecturing the initiative. Again, that's something we do in workshops, maybe even together with clients. So we see quite successfully, we set up a program where we continuously talk our new ideas and roadmap together with our clients. We agree on the targets there to be close to the customer needs, as opposed to former times years ago where we thought we know what the client is actually requiring. Also, this is a valid approach, but you at least, or at minimum, you really have to have an instinct on what the customer needs. In many cases, we also really ask the customer in order to find out. So that's the part here when talking about identifying how we can serve our customer in a specific part of the market for specific products. So it's not always, we need to really define the focus of these initiatives also. So it's not the entire organization is delivering something. We have different markets, we have different product services, and we really focus on these parts. As soon we identified where to go, we usually have different methods in order to find out or dig a bit deeper. So we quite successfully deployed our architecture brown paper approach. So this is for brainstorming sessions and design thinking. The nice thing is it not requires knowledge of enterprise architecture and tools like or languages like Archimate here. So it's more like a soft approach to identify value proposition or possible value proposition. Of course, the value proposition canvas is a great tool, and really important is the customer journey when it comes to outside-in customer-facing projects or where we really deliver customer value. And we try to categorize the findings. So usually we talk about providing options and easier ways for clients. So that's one of the archetypical findings we have. We try to save time for our customers. We improve the perceived value, and of course, it's quite often it's about information and messaging to the client to inform the client on what's actually going on. So these are it's not complete here, but from our findings, these are probably the most common findings or types of findings we have here in terms of value proposition. This somehow can guide you when defining or doing these workshops or defining gains and pains in a value proposition canvas. That's the thing you're looking for. So providing options to your clients, saving time for clients, improve perceived value, or better informing them. So that's something you can really keep in mind when defining pains and gains. Okay, with this knowledge, we still, it's kind of vague. We not have the concrete solution. We didn't even talk about the application architecture now, not about the data, but this obviously is the next step. So we now, as soon we know where to go, what we want to achieve, we can take a look at sorry. We can take a look at the capabilities that are supporting our initiative. And here it's clear we need to move past from a mere process, people, technology definition. So it's not just about structural information. What does a capability consist of? The important thing here is that we move to a that we focus or take a look at the capabilities from a user-centric data insights or mission contribution perspective. So what I mean is, in former times, we somehow classified our capabilities into whether being strategic importance or just supporting. And here we, in this approach, we really think each capability, how can it contribute to the mission of the organization? So that's an important thing. We're not just classifying them and then focusing on a couple of them. We really need to understand for each of the capabilities we have, how can it support the mission of our organization? Data insights is important. Here we see an example in the screenshot from an outside-in information. So we're doing surveys, in this case for an energy provider, for e-charging system, and we really ask questions that support us in improving the capability here. And of course, we also need the downstream part where we then go into the very details, where we need to understand what's the data we need, what's the application services we need, what technologies do we need in order to provide those capabilities. So the capability map or capabilities are, let's say, the base, the foundation we can build everything on, because our improvement initiatives or initiatives at all use the capabilities, and from capabilities we do the downstream check on whether we have all the resources we require in order to deliver. With this, and from here now, we can really go into the next level, define the roadmap. Here we see an example where we basically use Archimate as kind of build time of this roadmaps, tying everything together. So we see on the top, we see the plateaus. The plateaus are surface the milestones of certain initiative project. As mentioned before, each of those milestones need to support an objective, and each of these objectives needs to be supported by key results, measurable key results. And usually such a milestone or cycle, call it OKR cycle, is you could usually take a quarterly approach, for example. So an initiative, you really try to achieve key results within a quarter, and then you tackle the next cycle to reach the next milestone. And as you can see, the focus really lies on the upcoming milestone, where we already defined objectives, key results, we identified risks, we know what part of the architecture is going to be changed. As you can see here, we might already have planned sprints to proceed from the previous milestone to this plateau here. But on the other side, we not defined the upcoming milestone in the very details. We can, of course, if we have information already here, assign them here, but the main focus stays on delivery, concrete outcome for the market. And by combining those outcomes with our architectural targets, we really can support the entire initiative to drive value and to deliver key results and fulfill the objectives that really count for the business. So this obviously is more like architect's view on those topics. You can, in ADOIT, you then can convert it to a more business-like view on the roadmap. Here again, we see the same model now in a more like report for the business. On top, we really see what's in for us if we manage to achieve the milestone. So we really need to make sure that we talk in key results and measurable results here, what's done here. So for this milestone, we already see the value we can achieve. We also see for the downstream part of the milestone, we also see the architecture elements, and we have design of the architecture for this very specific part of the organization of our project. We also see the risks, so we take a shift left approach rather than designing an architecture, then later hand over to security teams to check whether, and compliance team to check whether everything is okay. We do this simultaneously, so part of our architecture team is also somebody from our colleagues from security and compliance to really see this very specific milestone comes with certain risks, and for the upcoming milestone we then decide how to tackle those risks. And of course we have the typical project planning here, as we took a more like agile approach. We focus on achieving these milestones in terms of sprints. So sprints sounds rather technical. So of course we have it in the IT. Most of those projects are IT driven anyways, but nevertheless, it's you can use sprint, Scrum, Kanban, whatever is required in order to achieve such a milestone. Okay, with this I hope I could inspire you a bit in terms of moving from a more data-driven or mere data-driven approach to an outcome-driven approach in your EA initiatives. With that said, I would directly hand over to Enrique. Enrique is giving us a quick overview or tour in ADOIT to really demo those different EA deliverables and services we've seen in my talk so far.
Perfect.
Okay, Enrique.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Christoph. We'll just do this as a very quick tour, basically bringing to life what Christoph was mentioning. So what we see is, and as you've seen through the keynote today, this is really, it's only really a mindset shift of what enterprise architects should look at, how they prioritize their strategy and their activities, in how they see their role within the organization as enabling this collaborative approach. Even from that, we see then an approach that takes really, even from how we present and how we organize ourselves around the architectural information, we see teams that are now organized in this context of initiatives that are driving the exploration of new business models. So here we would see, for example, an energy company. They're not starting from the capability map saying, okay, where is our weakness and our strength in general for the next 10 years? They're looking at saying, okay, where have we identified opportunities in the market for new business models where we're not yet participating in, but would certainly want to because of the market we sit in and because of the capabilities we might already be able to leverage for that. So here we see that kind of organization of current business models that are being evaluated by this example energy company. We'll be able to then drill down, as Christoph showed, through into this e-charging concept. We see the reasons why we see an opportunity for us. We're able to then drill down and say, okay, what is the outside in? So the opportunities and threats, strengths and weaknesses that then relates to this particular opportunity in the sense of how do we stand as an organization? And as you know, these type of deliverables are things that usually are being they're just a method for collaboration with marketing teams, with sales teams, which we would traditionally not think of architects working with in most scenarios, but actually we see that this is what enables the whole architecture delivery and value delivery to really land at the business value level. So we're really jumping from the start into the why we're doing the architecture work we're doing by tying it into what is it that the organization is trying to achieve as exploration of business models or as exploration of improvement initiatives. And from there, obviously, the strategy maps that we define, as Christoph said, this is a simpler example that rely on those objectives and the key results that are tied to them, but also bringing design or design thinking approaches like our brown paper approach. So our brown paper approach is essentially just saying, how do we go about allowing collaboration in an unstructured way? Because we also know not all team members in an organization, especially even in a project team that are working on transformation, are Archimate experts. They're also not even aware of what TOGAF is, but they are certainly aware of, they need to do market research, they need data to make their decisions on. So we try to, as architects, basically distill the discussions, guide the methods that create a more, let's say, formalized definition of what is being discussed that still enables us to use as a basis for later the downstream architecture we would want to make. So this allows us to, this brown paper approach allows us to have kind of a single page of collaboration. We're basically creating an overview of what's being discussed. We have the pestle here, we have kind of the strategies and findings. We might even have market research. We also then, for those key results, we have live connections to the KPIs that we're measuring from our system. So these are live data sources into ADOIT, where we're now bringing that outcome-driven approach. For example, we wanted to say we want to increase product stickiness. We're now tracking product stickiness as a certain KPI within the organization. We need also the feature adoption. So we're tracking whether the feature we introduced in our POC is increasing in usage compared to our traditional use case that we provided for our test group. We're basically creating data experiments out into the business with a business focus and getting those results out or to the users directly into the system where they're all collaborating. It's about building that collaborative approach, whether that's in an unstructured way. Of course, we can bring in just our sketches that we've done, or then landing into, let's say, methods that we are more accustomed to, like a business model canvas, an empathy map, a customer journey. Here, obviously, things start turning into more structured definitions. We start bringing in the customer touch points. We start bringing in the value streams that are related to those. And obviously, starting that journey downstream into, okay, what are the capabilities enabling these touch points and these value streams? And from there, really taking that kind of drill down approach as Christoph was mentioning. So I'm just going to go back in, and we were looking at capability models, as Christoph said. So we're looking to understand capabilities not only from a definition of, the traditional definition. We open the details and we say, okay, these are related to, some assets. That's great. But actually what we need to present to business and what we need to give people an insight to is what is the scope of that capability. So having the ability to present this to users that might not be comfortable with reading an Archimate model, but rather understanding, okay, this is the scoring of the capability. It's based on our surveys that we've been doing in the team. We have certain processes that the capability uses. Those processes also have a different way of being scored. That's also related to how well the capability performs, not directly, but it's being presented to a user here. Application states, so we see there's some applications in development that will change this capability. We see those two here. We see the application fitness, so the scoring on why this capability might be suffering or doing great with regards to its application fit. We also see usage. We also see information about, like Christoph said, more the outside-in perspective. How are we assessing this capability from a business perspective? And really, here we see then the survey results of that. So it's really about giving that big picture to everyone. And last but not least, what Christoph mentioned is how does that turn into then an actual, architecture we'd be more traditionally used to once we drill down. I'm just going to open up the one that already has their full. So this would be something that would allow you to start really going into the architecting of of that architecture that would be required to support the capability change or extension. Also, with security in mind, we introduce also trust boundaries. We introduce threat modeling. We have threats, especially in the outside boundaries of the ecosystem. We see kind of the internal architecture versus external architecture now combined, but still giving an understanding of where the trust boundaries exist with regards to threats and with regards to how the security architecture might be impacted. But this is really happening from an early stage, and this allows this design approach that is in the end resulting in assuring that it's supporting that business strategy, those business outcomes. So don't want to take any more time. I'll switch back to our slides to finalize with the questions session. So I know there's some questions from the audience. I know, Aaron, I think since you've been listening in, you might have some questions also to Christoph. So if you have any of those, we can certainly take some time now.
Yes, thank you, Henry. Okay, in the meantime, while I'll be shooting a couple of questions to Henry, Christoph, and Henry. So we have a chat box open. You feel free to type in any question that you may have, or perhaps something that you need clarification in regards or in the context of enterprise architecture, implementation, consulting approach, and perhaps the tool support and etc. So you feel free to type in the chat within this web GoToMeeting. Okay, so I will be asking Christoph. I think your presentation has been very insightful. So basically, I did so-called the concept introduction, and you have shown deeper in terms of how you execute. Of course, now people is always asking, where do I start? So we are talking about data-driven and outcome-driven. And what do you think an organization can start? Because the concept is like start small and think big. So where is so-called the sweet spot that we can start some? Yes, Chris, over to you.
So from my experience, I guess I'd say the business architecture, let's say the capability maps or value streams are a good common ground to kick off EA initiatives or to tighten your initiatives, because as we've seen before, or already discussed a couple of times, we have this inside out and outside in perspective, some cases even inside in, which of course is not focusing too much on clients. But if you take, for example, inside out, we think of what are we good at, how do we leverage our strengths, how can we compensate or eliminate our weaknesses. So that's something we can then tackle from the capability map downstream. We really can assign applications, whatever, and then find out where we have possible gaps. And on the other side, we have the outside in. If we really focus on capabilities from a more perspective of how those capabilities contribute to our mission, we think of where the growth markets available for our business, where the opportunities that we can tap into, or how can we better serve the needs of the market. So I would say capabilities are the common ground, but you can't define it on a mere architectural layer. So the advice is not just do capabilities. It's more like find out what's important for you, starting from the capability map, and then see whether you need to go upstream or downstream, depending on the very capability. That would be my advice. Start with capabilities, make sure you understand their contribution, and then find out whether you need to go outside in or inside out here.
Yes, perfect. I think now the capability is the key. So if you have embarked into so-called listening to the trend on the recent most launched Toga business architecture, it is really focuses on the capability, because capability is something that has a value instead of focusing on the initiative, because capability it will so-called differentiate us. It will separate us from our competitors, whether we are doing well or we are the average organization. Yeah, so because capability is focusing in terms of the resources or the people or the team structure, and whether technology itself can be supported, or whether the capability itself can be supported by the technology. All right, so I think while I'm still waiting for more questions, let me just ask Enric. So I think you did so-called a walkthrough example on how you do so-called use cases with the ADOIT tool. So in terms of the trend of the enterprise architecture, where do you think the trend heading? Especially, can an organization now say that, oh, I think fine, we can do EA without using the tool? Would that be possible? What is your take on that?
So we realize now that architecture teams are very diverse. That means that people who are doing architecture are not all architects, and they're spread out around the enterprise. So that is why there is somehow still a need to enable this collaboration to happen. And this is where a tool really allows so that the resulting products of different teams who are in somehow doing architecture but maybe don't know about it can now put that into an environment, into a language, into a collaborative space that really allows that to grow and not simply to be a project-specific outcome with another project-specific outcome that does not build on value to other initiatives. And we start seeing that interdependency and that interconnection between teams becomes more and more important, and teams begin to understand the value of these methods that they start using, even especially from the business architecture perspective. And the more we focus on that business architecture aspect, the more we can start having not a translation and a merging of IT and business, but really a coexistence as IT and business. And that we see a big role of ADOIT or tools like ADOIT in the enterprise architecture scope to enable that outcome to happen.
Yes, definitely, because architects are actually having enough problem, enough complexity that they need to handle. And why should architects also look into doing a manual tracing? Because of course, alternatively, an organization can use Excel, but let me tell you, just a mission impossible. Because I mean, 20 years ago, yes, it was possible to keep track, but in today's complexity, because the connection is like many to many, inside out, many to outside in, many, and just impossible. However, having said that, I come across one particular organization, a large organization. They have 6 people full-time just managing the complexity, the meta model, the relationship of the enterprise. And they told me that it took them about 5 minutes to load one Excel file, which exactly supposed to be done by the using the tool like EA tool like ADOIT. Rather than employing a 6 people salary and using Excel spreadsheet, using a powerful laptop and loading about 5 minutes. It's really ridiculous, but it's happening today. I'm not talking about yesterday. I'm talking about today. And this is also one of the listed company, very large listed company in Singapore. It's quite devastating when I heard about that news, but it's happening. Yeah, so awareness is important. The management need to know about such capability out there, and instead of using a manual work, hiring 5 people full time on this is I think it's too humongous the work. All right, I think I have a couple of questions, and I think has been answered by Enric, I believe. Okay, nevertheless, I think let me just go through a relevant one. Okay, it's like, how do you prioritize the strategic capabilities? I think this is a practical question, and I think maybe Christoph or Enric can help to explain it. I understand you have typed in the answer, but I think, how do you prioritize the strategic capability in terms of a practical way?
Sure. So as I mentioned in the text, there it's really about prioritizing the capabilities as strategically important based on those business outcomes and new business models we're trying to explore and enable the business to quickly act on. We're trying to be the enablers of that, and therefore if we're focusing on what the business is trying to achieve in terms of transformation, saying we want to enter into a new market, we want to enter into a new digital business model that we have not considered before, we then understand and define the kind of deliverables from that, which become then the customer journey. They become the value streams and value propositions. From that value proposition, we now need to derive as architects what capabilities are involved in that at the moment, what capabilities are missing at the moment. So it's not necessarily a quantitative method. It is a method of understanding what our capabilities are, obviously from the past and from our current state, but looking at what we want to change as a business from a customer and business value perspective, and translating them to what are the current capabilities that would enable that or prevent that at the moment, and what capabilities do we still require to be able to fulfill that customer journey, those value propositions that we're putting forward. So it's really having a business-centric approach at defining the strategic importance of the capability. And that happens if you have 6 in transformation initiatives, you might have 6 different types of scores against your capability and importance. And that's where that initiative based and the plateau based approach that Christoph mentioned becomes key, because you then have your plateaus, which are quarterly goals based on your key results, and then the capabilities that are related would be affected, and then the downstream of that with applications, data, and technology.
Right, thank you so much for the explanation. Hopefully the audience who asked this question can understand, but if you don't, I can, if you're already defining your capability, I think you can understand what Henrik has explained. I could understand it 100%, and I can picturize what he has described in his presentation. But if you don't, I think I do have a webinar, I think 2 months ago, I explained about how do you create a capability, where do you start, basically looking at organization function, etc. So you can look at the webinar in the YouTube, and you can see how I show you step by step to create this, exactly as what Henrik has described. Right, so moving on into the next question on the information about when the information, our organization strategy can be filled in the Archimate, or when the information can be filled in the Archimate. So what happened is that the Archimate is the modeling notation. So yes, perhaps can just answer this. I think, yeah, so the information definitely need to be structured in the so-called at the business layer, as well as we need to know where the information are being critical in terms of being leveraged or being used for any particular use cases. So we need to model that, and typically you can display that in the attributes, of a particular elements in the Archimate, or you can also define it in the information structure, the data layer itself. And you can also connect to the, either you want to connect to the ERD, to the actual physical database itself, or to the class diagram. So it depends on the level of information that you require. And of course, the information itself are very, very critical, because today when you want to know where does if there is any attack or so-called any vulnerability from the information, you need to know exactly where the information coming from, who are the users, which are processes in the enterprise that using that, and storing in which so-called database, what application function using that, and etc. So you need to get that information. Of course, the answer is coming from the meta model. So the meta model that you define, we will connect all the dots that are required for you, for us, or for you and me, to decide what the information are relevant, whether it's strategy, whether it's just information for display or for decision making. So I think, I hope can answer that answer to the question. So the next one, I think I will pass it back to either Henrik or Christoph. Like, is there any quantitative method for that? So, Henrik?
Sure, I think the important part here, there is a quantitative method of assessing the capability, but here it really becomes about assessing the capability contextually with regards to this business model. Because if we're assessing, for an example, our e-charging or payments capability, if we assess payments capability against our current business model, we might score it very well. But if we say, our new payments capability should enable RFID tag-based payment, we should enable QR code-based payment approaches through non-native apps, then you might start seeing that you are actually not scoring capability in the same way. So it's all about contextually doing that. And for that, we define surveys specific to the business model that we're addressing to see how well is the capability supporting that business model. We create questions that help answer or assess that capability against that business model, and share that survey with internal and external stakeholders who are currently involved in that capability, or as well currently involved in the project that's trying to introduce that business. It's all about contextually understanding and assessing that.
All right, so I think while waiting for the couple of questions to come in, maybe let me just ask directly to Christoph. I think we heard about having the right people, having a streamlined process, having integrated technology enough in the past. But in today's context of the digital transformation, having the right people itself, streamlined process and integrated technology alone are not enough. We need more. So we need to have a feasibility. We need to understand the impact of the of any changes that bring to the organization. We need to know the impact of moving a particular role to the other department. I also need to know if I want to combine these three processes, what is the impact? And also I need to know if I decommission this particular technology or adopt new technology, what is the impact? So I think now the question is not people, process, and technology anymore. This granted. You need to have the right people to do the right job. You need to have streamlined process, and you need to be technology integrated. So this, I think, industry has done in the last 20 years. So now it's moving into a fast of what we call it agile enterprise. So maybe we like to know about the thinking or the thought process or the insight from Christoph in terms of how should enterprise embark into this.
Good question. I see. Yeah, you mentioned people, processes, technologies, and as mentioned before, I personally would add mission, insights, and integration. So when talking about mission, that's the point I already mentioned before. So for each part of the enterprise architecture, we need to fully understand its contribution to the mission. If a piece is not contributing, it should not be part of or focus of our EA initiative. It's not the important thing there. In order to find out whether something is mission critical or not, we really can also do a bottom-up approach. For example, we start from the capability and ask ourselves, is it mission critical? How can it contribute to the mission? So that's an important thing. And here, from a bottom-up approach, also, again, we can use methods like value proposition canvas and such tools to really identify mission criticality of capabilities, but also of applications and whatsoever within the organization. The second part, I guess, we need to add to people, process, and technology, from my point of view, is insights. So we really need to set up informed decision making. We need to understand what pieces of the rely on market understanding, voice of the customer. We really need to understand how they contribute to the mission. So again, from a business perspective, if you take your CRM capability or whatever, you really need to find out how you can use the data you are collecting in order to improve your business. And the third part is integration. Integration in terms of decision frameworks, decision rights, policies we need to have in place. I think one important thing is the world is fast moving. It's no more that we can introduce processes, technology in a top-down approach. We more need to face or switch from a more control environment into a trust environment within our organization. So the motto must be control is good, but trust is better, cheaper, and faster. And therefore, in order to have this trust in our employees, we definitely need to set up a clear framework for decision making so that people understand the boundaries in which they support in achieving the organization's mission. So to summarize, I would say it's about mission, insights, and integration on top of people, process, and technology.
Right. Thank you so much.
From a time perspective, just one last question I saw here, which could transition us into the closing of the webinar. I see a question about whether the models that we showed today, that Christoph was also showing, are if they're available in the community edition of the tool. So we at BOC provide a free version of ADOIT that's fully Archimate compliant. That is available for anyone to download. The models that we showed today are not part of that. There's a sample banking environment there for users to use. If you're interested in really leveraging the demo environments, similar to what Christoph showed today, we do offer premium test accounts for users who are really evaluating the tool itself and not looking just to use the free version. So if you're interested in that, you can always reach out to us, to our website, and request a premium test account if you're interested in that. All right, and I think that is it for today. At least from BOC side, we'd like to thank again Aaron and the ATD solution team for the great collaboration and also for kicking off our partnership together. We really look forward to the collaboration ahead. We hope everyone enjoyed today's content. We will be sending an email with the presentation slides as well as a recording of the presentation in case you would like to share that with other colleagues of yours. So thank you very much. Aaron, I'm not sure if you would like to also make a closing statement.
Yeah, I think I would also like to say thank you very much for everyone attending this, our first joint webinar, and we hope to have more of such joint webinar moving forward, because I think you can see the synergy that we have is pretty much we are living in the East and the West, you know, but in terms of talking about enterprise architecture, how we drive, how we implement is identical. So there's a synergy that we can work and collaborate together to deliver more value to our existing client. And of course, thank you so much to Enrich and Dr. Christoph.
Perfect. Then thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And we look forward to hearing from you again. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.